deep within the ancient echoes of the Welsh Hills, where the mist clings to the valleys like a silver shroud, there lived a queen whose grace was matched only by her mystery. Her name was Rhiannon, a figure of the Celtic mythological cycle whose very presence felt like a bridge between the mortal realm and the ethereal world of the other world. She did not arrive in our world through ordinary means. She appeared atop a pale horse, riding with a steady, unhurried pace that no pursuer could ever hope to match. Pwyll, the Prince of Dyfed, watched her from the magical Mount of Gore Starburth, struck by a beauty that seemed carved from starlight and earth. Despite his fastest riders and swiftest steeds, Rhiannon remained just out of reach until Pwyll spoke to her, with the sincerity of a man truly captivated. Their union was meant to be a merging of worlds, a celebration of the strength found when the mundane meets the divine in the name of love. However, the shadows of the human heart are long, and the courtiers of Dyfed looked upon this foreign queen with eyes sharp with suspicion and envy. When Rhiannon finally gave birth to a son, the kingdom rejoiced for a fleeting moment, unaware of the tragedy lurking in the corners of the nursery. On the night of the child's birth, 6 maidens were set to watch over the infant and his mother. But sleep heavy and unnatural overtook them all. When the sun began to peek over the horizon, the cradle was empty, and the prince of the realm had vanished without a single cry or trace. Panicked by their own negligence and fearing the wrath of the law, the maidens devised a plan so cruel it would echo through the centuries as the ultimate betrayal. They took the blood of a newborn pup and smeared it across the face and hands of the sleeping Rhiannon, placing the bones beside her pillow. When Rhiannon awoke, her heart still heavy with the exhaustion of labor, she was met not with her son's touch, but with the screams of the lying maidens. They accused her of the unthinkable love devouring her own flesh and blood. In a fit of supernatural madness, Rhiannon, stunned and confused, looked at her bloodied hands and felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Yet her spirit remained strangely calm. She knew the truth of her own heart, even if the evidence before her eyes screamed a lie designed to destroy her. The news spread through the kingdom like a wildfire, turning the people's admiration into a cold, biting hatred for the queen from the other world. The nobles clamored for her execution, demanding that Pwyll cast aside the woman they now called a monster and a deceiver. But Pwyll, caught between his duty as a ruler and his lingering love for his wife, could not bring himself to spill her blood without a direct command from the gods. Instead, a sentence was passed, a punishment so humiliating and prolonged that it was intended to break her spirit day by agonizing day. Rhiannon was condemned to sit every day by the mounting block, outside the gates of the palace of Arbroath for 7 long years. Her task was to tell the story of her crime to every stranger and traveler who passed through the gates, admitting to a sin she never committed. Furthermore, she was required to offer to carry these guests upon her back, like a common beast of burden, into the royal court. This was the Horsewoman's unjust sentence, a literal and symbolic weight placed upon the shoulders of one who was once a goddess of the plains. Day after day, Rhiannon took her place, her back straight and her eyes clear, reflecting a dignity that the townspeople could not understand. She did not weep, nor did she rail against the heavens for the unfairness of her lot. She simply endured with a quiet, terrifying strength. Most travelers, moved by her regal bearing and the sadness in her voice, refused to be carried, sensing the injustice behind the ritual. Yet, Rhiannon would insist, offering her strength as a testament to her penance, turning her shame into a slow, deliberate form of resistance. To the Celts, the horse was a symbol of sovereignty and power, and by treating Rhiannon as a horse, the court sought to strip her of her humanity. They did not realize that a queen's power does not reside in her crown, but in the unwavering truth of her character. While Rhiannon suffered in silence, the wheels of fate were turning in another part of the land, far from the whispers of the palace. In the house of Tiernan Twrf Lyant, a lord of Gwent, a miraculous event occurred on the same night the prince disappeared. Tiernan owned a mare of exquisite beauty that gave birth to a foal every year on the eve of May, only for the foal to vanish before morning. This year, Tiernan drew his sword and watched, determined to catch the thief who had robbed him of his livestock for so long. At the stroke of midnight, a giant, clawed arm reached through the window, grasping for the newborn foal with unnatural strength. Tiernan struck with the precision of a warrior, severing the limb and chasing the beast into the darkness, but the intruder escaped into the night. Upon returning to the stable, Tiernan found more than just the foal he had saved. Lying in the straw was a golden-haired infant wrapped in silk. He and his wife, childless and yearning for a son, took the boy in and named him Grewalt Urin, or Gree of the Golden Hair. The boy grew at a rate that defied nature, reaching the size of a 7-year-old by his 3rd birthday, possessed of a wisdom far beyond his years. As the child grew, Tiernan began to notice the striking resemblance between the boy and Pwyll, the Prince of Dyfed. He remembered the tragic stories of the lost prince and the shamed queen, and a heavy realization settled in his chest. He knew that keeping the boy would be a crime against the truth, and he resolved to return the child to his rightful parents. Back at the gates of Arbeth, Rhiannon's hair had grown long and graying at the temples, but her spirit remained unbowed by the weight of the years. She had become a fixture of the landscape, a monument to a grief that refused to turn into bitterness. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, casting long, amber shadows across the dusty road, Rhiannon and his party approached the palace. Rhiannon rose from her seat, her voice steady as she began the familiar script of her alleged crime and her offer of service. Rhiannon looked at the woman before him, a queen reduced to a servant, and felt a wave of profound respect for her endurance. "Lady," Rhiannon said, his voice trembling with emotion, "I have not come to be carried, but to carry a message of hope to this house." He presented the young boy, whose golden hair shone like a beacon in the twilight, a living mirror of the man who sat on the throne inside. When Poole saw the child and heard Rhiannon's tale, the walls of his heart, long hardened by doubt, finally crumbled. The truth emerged like the sun from behind a cloud. The maiden's treachery was revealed, and Rhiannon's innocence was vindicated. "Pryderi," Rhiannon whispered as she held the boy, a name meaning trouble or worry, signifying the end of her long season of grief. The court fell silent as they realized the magnitude of the wrong they had inflicted upon the woman who stood among them. The maidens were punished, and the courtiers bowed their heads in shame. But Rhiannon offered no words of vengeance. Her victory was not in the destruction of her enemies, but in the survival of her soul throughout the ordeal. She had sat at that gate not just as a prisoner, but as a witness to the endurance of the feminine spirit in the face of systemic lies. In the Celtic tradition, Rhiannon is often associated with the goddess Epona, the protector of horses and the guide of souls. Her story is a cornerstone of the Mabinogion, reflecting the deep-seated themes of justice, patience, and the inevitabilities of fate. Why did she choose to endure such a sentence when she could have fled back to the other world, with a single whistle to her birds? Perhaps it was because she understood that true sovereignty requires one to stand their ground, even when the ground is shaking. She demonstrated that character is not defined by what happens to us, but by how we respond to the shadows cast by others. Her silence was not a sign of weakness. It was a reservoir of power that eventually forced the truth to the surface. This narrative serves as a reminder that the path of the hero is often paved with misunderstanding and isolation. Rhiannon's horse was not just a mode of transport, but a symbol of her connection to the wild, untamable forces of nature. Even when she was forced to act like a beast, she remained more human than those who judged her from behind stone walls. The concept of the unjust sentence resonates through history, echoing the experiences of countless individuals silenced by false accusations. In Welsh mythology, the land and the people are one. When the queen was shamed, the spirit of the land felt the sting of that injustice. Her restoration brought a new era of prosperity to Dyfed, as if the soil itself breathed a sigh of relief. Pryderi grew to be a great leader, his character forged by the legacy of his mother's resilience and his father's eventual wisdom. The birds of Rhiannon, said to sing the dead to sleep and wake the living, are often mentioned as her companions. Legend says they sang throughout her 7 years of penance, their melodies providing a comfort that no human word could offer. It is a story that challenges us to look beyond appearances and to question the narratives handed to us by the powerful. The mythological cycle of the Celts is rich with such complexities, where gods and mortals share the same table of suffering and joy. Rhiannon's journey from the other world to the gates of Arbeth is a cycle of descent and rebirth. She descended into the darkest depths of human cruelty only to rise again with her dignity intact and her family restored. The Horsewoman's sentence was a trial by fire, and she emerged not as ash, but as tempered steel. Today, we remember Rhiannon not just as a victim of a lie, but as the architect of her own redemption. Her story encourages us to find our own mounting block, the place where we stand firm in our truth, despite the world's judgment. In the quiet moments of the Welsh countryside, some say you can still hear the rhythmic beat of a horse's hooves on the wind. It is a sound that reminds us that some truths are older than the hills, and more enduring than the stone. Rhiannon teaches us that justice may be delayed, but the truth has a way of finding its way home, often through the most unexpected paths. The moral focus here is clear. Integrity is the only armor that cannot be pierced by the arrows of slander. When we speak of Rhiannon, we speak of the strength of the silence that waits for the right moment to speak. We speak of the grace that refuses to be diminished by the small-mindedness of those around us. Her narrative is a pivotal moment in the Mabinogion because it shifts the focus from external battles to internal ones. The real war was fought in Rhiannon's heart, against the temptation to hate those who hated her. And in that war, she was the ultimate victor, proving that love and truth are the highest forms of sovereignty. As we reflect on the Celtic myth, we see the reflections of our own struggles with fairness and perception. We see the faces of the maidens in every gossip, and the face of Pwyll in every person who fails to stand up for the truth. But most importantly, we see the face of Rhiannon in everyone who chooses to endure with dignity. The Horsewoman is a symbol for the ages, a beacon for anyone who has ever felt the weight of an unfair burden. Let her story be a comfort to you when the road is long and the gates seem closed. Let her birds sing to your spirit, reminding you that your worth is not determined by the stories others tell about you. You are the master of your own narrative, the rider of your own pale horse through the mist of time. In the end, Rhiannon did not just survive her sentence, she transcended it, leaving a legacy that still inspires poets and dreamers today. Thank you for walking this path of myth and legend with us, exploring the depths of the human and divine experience. If you found inspiration in the resilience of Rhiannon, please don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio for more journeys into the heart of storytelling.